I think I broke a
Unlike
fiddle
Uncle
player.
Bonsai, we don't have to pay for this by the inch.
Yes. They have a live recording where they mention that.
Hi, I'm really excited to be here today. This is a project that really means a lot to me, and I'm looking forward to doing it with you. A friend recently asked me about reading Ulysses. He knows that I love the book, and I talk about it a lot. And he said, you know, Chris, I've finally decided I'm going to read that book. I've tried it before, but I'm going to try it again. So give me some reference materials. Recommend some books I can read and some places I can do some research so I can read that book and get through it. And I was really excited about that because I'd love to talk about this book with my buddy. But on the other hand, I felt a little twinge because, I mean, do you really need a reference book to read a book? And do you have to like do the research to enjoy what might be the best book ever written? By pretty common consensus, that's the greatest book ever written. But it's a bit of a tragedy that we have to have a dozen reference books to get through it. And you have to read biographies and you know, the key to Ulysses and understanding Ulysses and Ulysses dissected, and that something is not right about that. So I thought about this, and it made me think about an analogy. Imagine that you've never had chocolate cake. And I have notes here, so if you see me looking down, I'm using notes because I want this to be valuable for you. But imagine that you've never had chocolate cake. Never. You've never experienced it. Now you've heard about it. People have talked about it. They told you how great it is. When you look up best things to eat, that's always shows up on the list, chocolate cake. So you've heard a lot about it. People seem to like it. It's very popular. It's on a lot of lists. But you've never had chocolate cake. Never even seen a chocolate cake. So you're talking to a friend and you say, you know, I've heard a lot about chocolate cake, but I've never had one. And a couple of days later, your friend shows up at your house with this big box. And he says, here, it's a chocolate cake. So you take the box to your table, put it down. He says, I gotta go. I just want to drop this off. Enjoy. And he leaves. And you open the box, and there it is. Dramatic moment. It's a chocolate cake. Hey, you have some idea what they look like. You've seen pictures, and you're kind of familiar. You just never had it before. So now you've got one. You've got this beautiful chocolate cake sitting on your table. And you look at it and you think, well, you know, I don't know anything about chocolate cake. I don't know anything about it at all. So I should do some research. So you go online and you order a bunch of books from Amazon. A lot of recipe books, cookbooks, baking books. And a couple of days later, the books show up because you're a valuable Prime member. And you start reading the recipes. And you find that they have some things in common, but it doesn't. This is a little complicated. I mean, start with the easy stuff. flour, egg, sugar, cocoa. Pretty simple, little baking powder. But the cake part is different from the outside part, the frosting stuff, they call it. And that's got a whole separate recipe. So you have to make the cake thing, and then that's got to cool off, and then you have to make the frosting thing, which is a completely different, it's like a totally different recipe. It's not like a recipe for a chocolate cake. You have two totally separate recipes. Everything else, make a souffle, there's a recipe for it. But this chocolate cake thing's got two recipes. That's a little complicated. But like I said, most of the recipes have things in common, like the flour and the sugar and eggs, and mix it up, bake it, and the frosting is butter and sugar, and mix it up and spread it on. But there is a lot of variation, and there's, gosh, thousands of books. I mean, you look online for a chocolate cake recipe, and there's thousands of recipes, and they're all a little bit different, and that can be a bit confusing. So you spend a few days researching this and reading about chocolate cake and the history of chocolate cake and all the variations of chocolate cake and the different recipes of chocolate cake. You start to get a pretty good understanding where you understand a bit about what a chocolate cake is about. You get down that the cake part and the frosting thing, and the cake is the middle part and the frosting is the outside, and that's got to be baked, the cake part. And that's the flour, and that's got a little different texture, and so you start to get a kind of a general understanding of it. And about the time you think you've got it down, bam, you run across this website that says flour is the worst thing in the world. You can't have gluten. When you mix flour, it makes gluten. Gluten is terrible. It's bad for you. It's to make you sick. Half the country is having sinus problems and everything else because they're eating gluten. Gluten's the worst thing in the world. Side note, if you happen to be gluten-free, this is only to facilitate this conversation, so I'm not making a judgment about gluten. Back to where I was. Now, this gluten aside sort of confuses you a little bit because far and away 90% of the recipes say flour, eggs, sugar, cocoa, mix it up, bake it. That's pretty much your standard chocolate cake part. But now this gluten-free thing, and so you think, well, maybe I better look a little deeper in this. I thought I understood it, but I guess I didn't. So you start doing some research there, and you find there, boy, there's a lot of information out there about this gluten-free cake stuff. There's different recipes using things like rice flour and almond flour and no flour. There's chocolate cake recipes that don't use flour at all. Now that's confusing. I thought I was starting to get a handle on this, and then this gluten-free thing comes along. But I kind of get it. There's like two schools. Okay, there's the normal cake flour gluten school, and then there's the gluten-free school. So okay, I'm starting to get it. So I put that together, and I think, you know, I'm just about ready to dig into this thing because I have a pretty good understanding now, better than most people, because I've done all this research, right? I've got this mountain of books over here, and I'm starting to get it. And then you come across somebody that says sugar is bad. You should never eat sugar. It's the worst thing in the world for you. You shouldn't eat sugar at all. Limit your sugar intake to 1 gram a day. There's more sugar in that in milk than that. So I mean, what are you gonna what sugar? I mean, that's like the whole basis of this. It's a sweet thing, right? Chocolate cake. There's sugar in the cake part. There's sugar in the frosting part. And then now there's all this, you shouldn't eat sugar. Better do some research on this. So order some books, go online, do some more research. Boy, this is really confusing stuff, and there's volumes of books. So you not only have this whole gluten thing to understand, but now there's the whole sugar thing to understand. But you begin to get a grip on that too. So I see, you know, sugar in moderation may be okay unless you're diabetic and then you shouldn't eat it. And, okay, I'm starting to understand this. So gluten for people who are gluten intolerant, okay, stay away from it. And people with diabetes or trying to lose weight probably shouldn't eat a lot of sugar. Sugar really isn't great for you, so shouldn't eat a lot of it. So, that chocolate cake, I shouldn't sit down and eat the whole thing. So I get probably small pieces, all right? So I'm starting to understand a broader perspective again due to my research. But I'm still not 100% comfortable. I want to look at the background of some of the people that are putting out these recipes and see, how legitimate are they. So I'm going to read a few biographies just to sort of round out my chocolate cake education. So I read a biography about a great baker, and I find out that most great bakers started out on chocolate cake. And it's interesting. Okay, and most of them say that if you're going to be a great baker, you got to be able to make a great chocolate cake. And they started out in their early days, before they got into other stuff. Basic chocolate cake, that was their thing. That's where they learned. And a lot of the great bakers say, what really got them interested in baking was chocolate cake. They loved chocolate cake, and they started making cakes when they were a kid, and then they learned how to make a better and better chocolate cake. And so a lot of the great bakers started out with chocolate cake. So, this is getting interesting. So you've done all this research now, and you see the importance of chocolate cake, because all the great bakers say they started out with chocolate cake. And you understand the gluten thing and the sugar thing and all the variations and shapes and sizes of chocolate cakes. And man, you've really done your homework. You spent the last 2 weeks reading books and studying day and night. You stay up late, read books, go online, look up something. You come across something in a recipe book, say, what is that? What is cocoa liqueur? What is that? Look it up. So you've done all this great research, and now you're ready. You're ready. So you sit down at the table, you get your knife, and you start to cut it, and it's kind of tough, it's a little crusty on the outside, and it's kind of hard to cut. And it's tougher than you expect. You expect it to be soft and kind of fluffy, and maybe the frosting part is gooey or something, but certainly not hard like this. But I don't know. I've never had chocolate cake, so maybe that's the way it is. So I'm going to cut out a section. So I cut out this big chunk of it. It's like a fourth of the cake. Cut this big piece. Put it on my plate. Get my fork, and I'm all ready to go, right? Nice tall glass of lemonade to go with it. And I take my first bite of chocolate cake, and it's not that good. It's dry. The frosting stuff is hard, and it kind of tastes stale. It's not great. And so I take a little lemonade to wash it down, and ooh, boy, that's bad. Chocolate cake and lemonade don't go together, and I didn't come across that in any of my reading. It's not good. You know what? I don't think I like chocolate cake. It's just not for me. Other people may like it. Chris may love it, but not for me. Now, that is kind of the way a lot of people experience Ulysses. They pick the book up, they read a few pages, it seems like it's intense. They've heard that it's a complicated, difficult book. So they do a bunch of research, and they do a bunch of study, and they do all this stuff to understand this book. And they overcomplicate it, and they lose the pleasure of just sitting down and enjoying it. And that's what I want your experience to be. I want your experience with Ulysses to be like chocolate cake. I want you to enjoy it, to savor it. don't spend 2 weeks doing research before you read it. I'll give you a little 5-minute intro. That's probably going to be the hardest part of this thing, 5 to 10 minutes. I want to make a little grand overview of the book to give you a foundation, and then a little overview of each chapter. Watch the video first, then read the chapter. I want to give you some things to look for and help you enjoy it. Now, some chapters are easier than others. Granted, just like chocolate cakes, some you can make in a box and whip them out in an hour. And some are very complex and delicate and complicated. And Joyce's writing is like that. There's some stuff that's very basic and just a lot of fun, and some things are a little bit complicated. And I want to get you through all the stuff. Now, you're not going to understand all of it, but you should be able to enjoy it. The book is very enjoyable. I don't understand all of it. I'm not pretending to. But the book is very, very enjoyable. So don't do all the research. Don't do a bunch of work. Just enjoy the book. That's what these videos are going to be about. Okay? I want you to enjoy it like chocolate cake. Just sit down and eat it. So the next video will be an overview of the book and not nearly as lengthy as this video. And then I will make a little short video for each episode of the book so that you can know what to look for and understand it going in and know what to expect, so that when you get in and you start finding these little nuggets, it'll be more enjoyable for you. And I hope you'll stick with it and finish the book and enjoy it. And that's all I want, is for this to be a fun experience for you. So, Irish whiskey, cheers. I'll see you at the overview. See you next time.